We are back with more college football coverage, and going into week one, there is a lot to talk about. So to get straight into the first Thursday game of this slate between number 25 Boise State and South Florida. Now, both of these teams are obviously trying to retool from last season, especially when you look at it from Boise State's side. Of course, Madsen is still there, but Ashton Jeanty is a huge loss. And his replacement is not going to be easy. It wasn't going to be. We had to envision that coming. Boise State would try it. They elevated the redshirt freshman, Sire Gaines, to get more reps this season, and they also brought in a 6-year senior transfer in Malik Sherrod. Now, again, you're thinking that he has all this experience in the world. He should, realistically, be able to come in and give them a bit of solid contributions this season. Might not be up to Jeanty standards. I mean, this man literally was a runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. But as long as you can get a solid by committee system going, you're going to be fine. And to start out this game for Boise State, that is not how it went at all. They were so passive in this one. And I mean, I get it. Madsen, this is the first game of the season. You're trying to make sure that he settles into things and gets into a bit of rhythm before becoming more aggressive. But it felt like throughout the course of this game, and especially when it comes to this first drive, that just never really happened. Everything was short. And even though some of these receivers were able to come down with this, like you have this man throwing hospital balls and all the like this play to Lauder, like he was literally about to get injured on this play because of how short this pass was. There's just no reason for that. And it's not like the line was crumbling yet. I mean, they had a number of returning players from last year. So they've definitely got the experience to go toe-to-toe with any defense. And when it came to pass protection, I guess they were fine during this early stretch. But they could not establish the run in the slightest. None of their running backs, not even another player in Riley here, could manage to do much of anything. So they get down to 3rd and 10, and he ends up throwing the ball to Sherrod. Yet he can't even protect the football. And they punch it out of him. USF automatically gets the ball right there. That's just not a great start to the season. Like, how are you a 6-year senior fumbling the ball like that? They preach ball security, man. You should know this by now. So I don't think there's really any excuse for that. Let's talk about something with both teams, because the next few possessions were very, very slow. And that's going to be a theme for a lot of these games, just to give a brief spoiler without giving too much away. A lot of these games started out slow. I get it. Again, some of these teams have new quarterbacks trying to figure out new systems. Some of these teams are just inexperienced as a collective, and they're trying to find their footing. It's a fresh start for everybody. So there are going to be growing pains with certain teams. And yet other teams, I guess the more established ones at this point, should be expected to do a little more. Still, what are you going to do about it for at least the first few possessions? As they continue to get the repetition in, things could probably sure up from there. But these next few possessions, man, for both South Florida and Boise State were just absolutely atrocious. I mean, you got to credit both defenses for being able to lock each other down. But a theme with these is that these damn RPO plays that they were calling were just so damn predictable. Like, they blew up the pass completely. And yet, for whatever reason, Madsen and Byron Brown for the Bulls here, they would still decide to just throw the ball in this situation instead of just handing it off or running it themselves. It's called an RPO for a reason. You have multiple options to choose from, and yet you go with the least likely option that gives you, honestly, the least amount of yardage in this situation because of how tight those defenses were playing you. You stood no chance. And I guess both quarterbacks, to an extent, were uncomfortable. Like, Brown himself is more of a scrambler, and they would find that out later on. But when it came to dropping back, he wasn't really given the greatest amount of time in the world. Like, the Broncos defense, credit to them, they were starting to dial it up a little bit. And they would stop him on this 4th down. So from there, they would get the ball back. Boise State would actually get something to go. The first pass of this possession, I kid you not, through watching that first half of that game, that attempt, even though it was incomplete, was Maddox Madsen's longest pass attempt of the game so far. And again, at that point, and again, as I'd been saying throughout the whole time, just watching it live, like, yes, obviously, there are large shoes to fill in that backfield when it comes to the running back room. I get it. But it doesn't have to be that difficult. Because at this point, Madsen's gaining more experience by the day. I don't know whether, it's a mindset of his that he can't necessarily get to this level, or that his skill is just not up to par with that of everyone else's. But he's got to shake that off nevertheless, because at some point, when it comes to trying to establish the run, Gaines and Sherrod, even at this point, are not the same caliber of running back. It's going to take some work to get them involved in a ball game and get them to be exposed to open rushing lanes. It is on you then, Madsen, to be able to throw and stretch the field in order to open up the run game for them. That's how this has got to work. You can't try to run to establish the pass because no team at this point, with your loss in talent, they're not falling for that anymore. And if he did not get accustomed to being more aggressive in this game, things were not going to fare well for them at all. But as far as this drive goes, there was some semblance of that going on. He was able to get some solid in-breaking passing routes to one of his guys right here in Marshall, who was actually touted as an ESPN 300 ranked individual in his respective year of recruitment. So that's pretty good. It would also eventually draw pass interference on this drive as well. So all of a sudden, the Broncos, they're driving. They're doing exactly what they got to do. They do get pushed back after being at their 1 yard line, though, because of a false start. That is always the fucking worst. Still on 3rd and 6. And I like this kind of route concept that they had. They had Marshall lined up in like a trips formation, and they had dummy routes go out wide and run theirs essentially before Marshall went up and ran his own. They did a perfect job of hiding him on that play, and Madsen was able to exploit it, get him in for a touchdown, and the Broncos would get a 7-0 lead there. But the next few possessions for the Broncos, at least, on both sides, started to see them slip a little bit. I mean, obviously the offense would still remain slow, even with Sire Gaines showing some promise, though, again, that wasn't consistent enough. The Bulls, in fact, would get back-to-back scoring drives. First, they would drive all the way down for 81 yards to get a field goal. On that possession, I believe, Brown was able to lock in with Nimrod, one of the wide receivers for the Bulls team actually on multiple occasions. Actually got him on a nice deep route to get them in field goal range in the first place. And that was to pick up a 3rd and long too. So the fact that they were able to get it, like, that's pretty fucking insane. And even though they were able to get to Brown a few times with pressures and sacks, when he got open, the Broncos couldn't do anything with him when he got space. Like, he had a struggle too where, again, he had to throw to open up the run game. But he's got a much better build than Madsen. So if he needed to scramble, he could afford to do so and get away with it. Like, there was a situation later on in this drive where the touchdown here would eventually get, I guess, on the next possession rather, they would overturn a potential first down. They initially ruled this a fumble, but it was overturned as an incomplete pass. And so they get themselves in 3rd down here. Tell me why this man, Byron Brown, not only just breaks free for a touchdown, but gets the ultimate revenge. Because on this same overturn play that I guess technically didn't count, one of their defensive captains at Boise State, I think it's like Beneford or something. I can check that out. But number 0 on the team, he actually threw Brown down to the ground. And little did he know he would receive instant karma. Because that man would not only run to the end zone unscathed, but as soon as he got there, Benefield. Okay. As soon as he gets there, Brown, they meet at the summit, and Brown just runs his ass right over, trucks the shit out of him for an easy score. It was just crazy to see that happen. All of a sudden, the Bulls have a 10-7 lead now. Man. You're thinking that Boise State would have a response, and they were driving, to their credit, but they actually would fumble from there. And at that point, I stopped watching the game to handle other business. But in my mind, I'm thinking that Boise State's a good enough team to potentially come back and win this entire thing the whole time. Yet I'm tracking it on my phone, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. Like, the first half ended with the same stalemate score. Again, credit to both defenses for being able to impose their will here. But for whatever reason, the Bulls just started owning that Boise State unit. I mean, tell me why, in one case, they run a fake punt with their backup quarterback and get a 45-yard touchdown pass. Then the Broncos, feeling a sense of desperation, just go for it on 4th down multiple times and are stopped at every single turn with incomplete pass after incomplete pass. And then a fumble, and then another turnover on downs for them. All this while the Bulls just continue to run it up. Like, he would lock in Brown with the Nimrod again for a 55-yard catch before getting another 15-yard rushing touchdown of his own. And then to cap things off here, they would get another touchdown with Norton, one of their running backs, to push the lead up to 31-7. Add even more insult to injury, Nico Gramatica, actually the son of Martin Gramatica, would get another field goal in this game, and the final score would stand at 34-7. Like, I came back in as the game was winding down, and I just could not believe what the hell was taking place. But that's exactly what my point was. Madsen, for all intents and purposes, was just completely rattled in this one. I mean, they were able to completely pressure him and make him feel uncomfortable at every turn. He could never truly settle into a throw at all. There was always second guessing when it came to his reads. And again, also, he might just not have the same skill set as other elite quarterbacks in college football. You know, maybe the case was that Genty was certainly helping him look good. And of course, that's not hard to do. But man, he had to step up regardless of that. And it just didn't happen. Like, you know, 25 of 46 passing for him and 225 yards with a touchdown ain't the worst in the world, but for a player of your background, you could be doing so much better than that. Truly. And you frankly needed to, with the way the run game was. Outside of Gaines, ironically enough, having 9 rushes for 44 yards, all of the other rushers were ineffective. I mean, Madsen, again, a lot of that could come from sack yardage, but he averaged just 2.8 yards per carry. Sherrod, 6-year senior, by the way, averaged just 2.5 yards per carry. And then Riley averaged just 2.9 yards per carry. It wasn't explosive by any stretch of the imagination. Like, you had to elevate your ability in the passing game, and you refused to do so, and as a result, they lost this one. Meanwhile, like, think about how South Florida has got to be feeling about this one. By the time the game was done, like, Brown actually put together a complete body of work. He damn near, not even damn near, he flat out outplayed Madsen in this one. He had 253 total yards of offense by himself and 2 rushing touchdowns on 66.7% completion from the field as well. This backup quarterback, fun fact, also managed to get an 808 QBR after just throwing that pass for a touchdown. It's definitely weird how that metric tends to work in college, but hey, man, what are you going to do? A couple of their wide receivers also did pretty well. The Nimrod, Chaz Nimrod, would get 96 receiving yards on 3 catches, and Singleton would also get a touchdown on 93 receiving yards and 5 catches as well. That is a great start to the season for them. Like, I can imagine that, again, it's going to take some work for them to become more formidable, but if they're doing this to a top 25 opponent, that should give them a lot of confidence. Sloppy stuff from Boise State on the other end. And they're certainly going to drop. They're going to become unranked. That's obvious. To think that, again, this is something they're going to have to start dealing with. And they will probably face better competition as they move over to the Pac-12 next season. This is a bad look for that prospect. This is not a game you can afford to lose and lose this badly. It would have been one thing if this came down to the wire or something and South Florida was able to pull off a miraculous win. No, they flat out, after that first half, ran all over you. And you did nothing about it. And that was the thing, too. Like, a lot of these defensive guys are returning. Like Benefield, again, one of their captains. He's a returning guy. And the downfall of their season last year, especially when you look at that fluke game that Penn State had, was the fact that they couldn't stop a lick on defense. You thought after something like that, you would have learned your lesson. And yet, clearly you didn't. You let an inferior team completely own you, dude. Like, that makes no sense, bro. Come on, man. Ugly way to start out if you're them. All right. Moving on to Nebraska and Cincinnati. Now, this one is pretty fucking ironic, man. I mean, like, of course, Raiola is trying his hardest to be a disciple of Patrick Mahomes, and this game was played in none other than Arrowhead Stadium, with Patrick Mahomes in attendance. I think Chris Jones was there, Hollywood Brown was there, and of course, Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift were there as newly engaged partners. That aside, there was a game that had to be played in the midst of all this, and the matchup is a little interesting. You know, Raiola is obviously in his second year, and Sorsby is definitely a guy that's viewed as a pretty talented dual threat quarterback. He's got a ton more experience. And yet, honestly, if I were to tell you that this game would be a stalemate for most of the first half, you probably wouldn't believe me. Yet, the Cincinnati defense and Nebraska's more known, more respected defense, they held each other in check for most of this time. Especially when you look at Brandon Sorsby, brother had no time to throw. Every single pass of his seemed rushed, and they kept everything short. I had complaints of Madsen not throwing the ball deep at all. For most of this game, and especially most of this first half, Sorsby was just... in the passing game, he wasn't doing anything. I kid you not, man. Literally everything was a short pass or incomplete. And they had to rely heavily on the run game. It would take them a little bit of time to get going, though. But, credit to them for being able to stop Nebraska's run game. Though that was carried mostly by the contributions of Johnson, a returning running back for them from last year. He was everything in that game for them. If he didn't put all that effort on the ground, man, I don't know how long Nebraska would have lasted for. Because when you're trying to have this smash mouth kind of game, you need to be able to hit back whenever. And credit to them, they were able to do so. Cincinnati would get something in their favor. They would actually get a field goal eventually. But again, a lot of that was predicated on how good they could run the football. It wasn't necessarily on Sorsby's arm here. The Cornhuskers would respond with a field goal of their own after a little bit of work. Raiola also would be more accurate, though. Again, same thing with him. Everything was short. You're just trying to get him in a rhythm as well. Just compounding them even. And they actually got a solid RPO play to go and pick up some yards for first down, but inevitably they would be stopped again on third, and they would have to make a 52-yard field goal. But credit to the damn kicker for booting that shit in there. A lot of the same for a while. Neither defense would relent at all. Punt, and then a field goal for the Cornhuskers. Again, mostly driven by the rush. Now, they were able to get a 13-yard and 24-yard pass in. You got to credit Raiola for that, because that pass was absolutely spectacular. He just carved them right up on that specific play. It was a dot for sure. But they would still stall out inevitably. And you would have them go up 6-3. That's fun, I guess. Back-to-back punts yet again for both defenses. Sorsby was just jittery. And again, you're who's the second-year player and who's the fourth-year, fifth-year senior in this game? You couldn't even tell the difference. That pass was just incredibly jumpy. He got way too excited. And to be that way in that situation is a little embarrassing. All you have to do is settle down a little bit. Yes, this is a neutral field. Nebraska technically has home field advantage, but you gotta tune all that out if you're a quarterback in this situation. Nebraska would have a little bit of trouble. Because as the first half was winding down, turnovers were getting closer and closer to happening. See, that's the interesting thing about it as well. This was a clean ball game for the most part. It was ugly, but there weren't a lot of turnovers in the earliest portion of this first half. It was just drives that were stalled out by great defensive play. It was a slugfest in every sense of the imagination. And then danger would take place because Raiola would actually try to get this ball out and would get sack fumbled. Now, luckily, he was able to bounce back on it. And the Bearcats would still get the ball back, but they wouldn't be so fortunate themselves. Because Shavers Jr., one of their linebackers, would actually manage to punch out a fumble on Goody and recover the ball for the squad. They would check it, they would challenge it, and it would be ruled a fumble. In a sequence that truly changed the game for the Cornhuskers. They were able to get themselves a short field. They didn't have to do much. Hunter would be targeted ad nauseum on this drive. It took him just 3 plays, and yet they managed to get a touchdown to none other than Hunter from 5 yards out to take a 13-3 lead. Going into the third quarter, the game plan for Cincinnati, honestly, they were in a way doing every single thing they needed to do, but they could not sustain or close out drives properly. They couldn't, especially when you factor in that turnover right there. And they needed to turn that around if they wanted to win. Cincinnati would come through for them defensively, though. Not gonna lie. I mean, Raiola also had a situation where on a 4th and 2, he's just overshooting Johnson out of the backfield. It's like, you don't really need to do that at all. Plus, at that point, Johnson had just been running rampant all over the team by himself. Maybe it would have been better for you to just hand it off to him. But again, it would be too predictable. I understand. Still, that field position, when you're talking about strategy, man, that 4th down attempt backfired completely. Not only did they fail, but they were just succumbing to Sorsby's will after that. I mean, that's the thing about Brendan Sorsby. Like, while he is a true dual threat quarterback, at the same time, this game just saw him completely gash them in the rushing attack by himself. By his damn self. Like, at every other turn, I kid you not, aside from all the short and incomplete passes, as soon as this man dropped back, he climbed the pocket, found some rushing lane to attack, and ran it. And while these gains weren't really long, they were demoralizing as shit. Because at some point, if you're the Cornhuskers defense, if that's continuously ramping up, you'd at least put a body on them, right? No. 8-yard run, 4-yard run, and then a 7-yard touchdown run. Just using all of his fucking strength to muscle in a touchdown. Like, I literally had to question it. Like, how are you going to continuously allow him to get away with tucking and running the fucking ball? That's his strategy every time. It's exactly what he wants to do, and you're just going to give it to him? Like, it doesn't make any sense. They also still tried to use Nebraska at numerous points, Johnson out of the backfield as a receiving back, and I just didn't really understand that. Like, he was getting just sizable gains on the ground at every turn. Let him stick to doing that. Stop trying to make him into something he might not be at this point. Even if it might fit the mold of the offense. It's like, you just can't force that on him, right? They would handle Sorsby much better on this drive And as a result, they were rewarded promptly. They were able to take a nice chunk of time off with this drive of theirs. Raiola, credit to him, this drive was one of his finer ones. It seemed a bit more composed. And honestly, as you're going into the fourth quarter of any game, that's how you want your quarterback to act. Again, it's not going to be perfect with him, but, it's clear that he's at least learning a little bit of something from last season. And that's all you can really ask for at this point. He would continue to drive the team down the field. And it got much tougher in the red zone as it should be. I mean, they had to work for it. The Bearcats were not going to let them get in easily. And it could have been disastrous as well because this Bonner person actually ended up fumbling on a play and it ended up going out of bounds. That's so fortunate for them. They would still be stymied on third, and then on fourth down, decision time, because you can either take a field goal or you could go for it all and score a touchdown. They would decide to go for it. And again, if you do get it, you're a madman. If you don't get it, they would be on Matt Rule's head. Matt Rule would be the former in this situation because they would get a smart fucking fourth down call here and get it over to Key for 3-yard touchdown. But the Bearcats would clap right back. And again, in the most demoralizing way possible. There were some pass attempts, yes. Sorsby didn't complete a single pass here. In fact, he managed to get a 29-yard run and a 7-yard run, while Walker, one of their running backs, also managed to get some solid gains. And before you know it, Sorsby was in from 1 yard out with a touchdown of his own. It's ridiculous because over that drive, they would show something incredibly fucking crazy. Like, obviously, both teams highlight and hang their hats on having strong rushing attacks and strong defenses. And obviously, with the way the game was going, that would certainly display itself. But tell me why this man, Brendan Sorsby, a person who, again, I do believe to be a good quarterback, tell me why he wasn't even playing like an average quarterback. His stat line in terms of pure passing was abysmal. He had something like 10 completions for around like 20 to 30 yards. Dead ass. And I had to look it over because I was literally thinking that the shit was a fucking typo. And it turned out that that wasn't the case at all. He legitimately could not throw the damn ball. And again, I don't know if that's a testament to Nebraska's defense or just some ineptitude from Sorsby here. Again, some of these misses were routine misses that any quarterback should be getting, especially Sorsby at this stage of his college career. And yet he missed, that's inexcusable. But I guess he would have another chance to redeem himself because they would get a stop on Raiola and the Cornhuskers here. And at that point, his numbers are certainly going to go up from there because, well, you have to pass. You're not going to be able to run all over them. But he was still able to sneak a few rushes in there. He was able to pick up some solid first downs. And I'm like, why the hell wasn't he doing this all game long? Like, he made some pretty good reads. Yes, in theory, they were willing to give it up to him. But he almost led them. With the skill that I know that he has, he almost led them to a game-winning touchdown drive. And yet, he did the most predictable thing on this first down play. They were able to draw a pass interference on the play before on the same safety in Hartzig Jr. that would eventually make this play. When he drops back the pass, He goes for a receiver that's running all the way towards the right side of the end zone here. He tries to get it over to him, and he's slightly covered, but you also have Hartzig Jr. tailing over, watching Sorsby's every movement. He pounces on the route, and he's hustling his ass down there. The pass wasn't even as accurate as it should have been, and Hartzig Jr., with his instinctive play, was able to get an interception to seal the deal. In a game that was definitely an interesting one, to say the least, the Cornhuskers would come out on top with a 20-17 win. Again, technically they had the home field advantage, but nevertheless, to start off your season in a neutral field and get a win always has to feel good for you. And again, I'll just look at Cincinnati's numbers here. This is unexplainable to me. Like, how the hell did you in Sorsby here have just 69 yards passing, and a good number of that came on the last drive? Think about how absurd that is. And then the game sealing interception as well, on just 52% completion. But that being said, his rushing numbers, they were elite. He was by far the Bearcats' leading rusher with 96 rushing yards on the ground and 2 rushing touchdowns of his own. Walker also had 53. And as a collective, the Bearcats had 202 rushing yards. Like, they were, even with Johnson handling these duties for the Cornhuskers, he still just had 108 yards by himself without anyone else really contributing a whole bunch. So they at least had the advantage there. But when push came to shove, it was a tight enough ball game. They didn't have much of a chance to try to establish the run on that drive. They needed to stretch the field, and that was something that Sorsby clearly struggled with all game long. Technically, you could make the same case for Dylan Raiola, but he was a lot smarter in this game than people would probably give him credit for. You know, he went 33 of 42 for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns. Not necessarily the flashiest of averages, but it got the job done. And in a game that was as close as this was, he did all the right things. You know, sure, he took some sacks, and yes, he did fumble the ball a few times, but he was able to recover them. They were able to protect the ball for the most part, and that turnover at the near end of the first half ended up being all the difference in this one. Like, it's something that I think that Cincinnati could bounce back from, but man, this cannot be a recurring theme for Sorsby. You gotta bring a lot more energy than that. Like, there is just no way that should be fucking happening, dude. I'm sorry. Like, that's impossible. You know you are way fucking better than that. There's no excuse to have that just combobulated style. Like, yo, no. Hell no. Inexcusable. Great win for Nebraska, though. You just got to give credit where credit is due. They stuck to their guns. They ran this game in the exact way that they wanted to be honest. And it paid off for them. Alright, moving on to Georgia Tech and Colorado. Oh boy. Alright, man. So, how do I want to approach this, man? Because this game was just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the quarterback matchup for this one was going to be interesting because Caden Salter is a transfer over from Liberty, and Haynes King was returning for his damn 5th year. It had the potential, as I kept reiterating throughout the week leading up to it, this had the potential to be a great game or a very bad one. The result would land somewhere in the middle. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it was definitely fucking weird. I mean, literally, when I tell you that this game could not have started any worse for Georgia Tech, I literally, like, their first 3 possessions all ended in fucking turnovers. Now, the first one is a little bit, excusable, okay? Because Haynes King and Phil Haynes out of the backfield, yeah, that duo, right? There was a miscommunication on the exchange. Haynes held onto the ball too long, and the ball dropped to the ground. The defense was able to recover. That's a standard one. It hurts. You're always going to want that back, but that's fine. The next 2 were just absolutely ridiculous because you have a 5th-year senior in Haynes King doing this shit. And I'm like, bro, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this fumble here was recovered by French, and then he would just throw a ridiculous fucking interception, man, to McKinney. And again, some of these reads of his were just egregious, man. Like, yes, Haynes King is more of a running quarterback. That's been proven. I mean, take it back to his time at Texas A&M. He's always been a running quarterback. But my goodness, man, they're just asking you to make the routine reads. We know that Georgia Tech is more of a triple option style offense. They're not going to always be trying to stretch the ball down the field. But you got to hit the routine ones, and you couldn't even do that. So it's like, man. And to think as well that all this stuff was just being wasted. Like, yeah, Haynes King, again, is a solid player at least, but he wasn't even playing like himself. He just looked like an average, below average quarterback in this one. And honestly, when you get that kind of pressure on him that the Buffalo's defense was able to in the first portion of this game, well, it's not difficult to make that happen. Get him a little uncomfortable. He's going to definitely be a bit turnover prone. That's obvious. And, I mean, for the longest time in this game, if you're making all these different plays on defense, if you're Colorado, you're getting chance after chance after chance to compound on the lead. But this is where they fucked up. Because Salter actually had a solid first drive. I mean, it's not hard to do when you literally get field position inside Georgia Tech's 36-yard line. But they were able to get some solid runs going with Welch, a returning player for them, and Salter would fire over a dot. Like, he had to escape Georgia Tech's pressure in this one, but eventually he rolled right back over to the right side of the field and found one of their other running backs in Taylor leaping up for a hell of a catch in the end zone. Great catch, and maybe even a better throw under duress from Salter. That would give them a 7-0 lead. Tell me why they went absolutely cold in every single possession after that. Absolutely cold. Like, on their end, you have Georgia Tech on the ropes, and yet, for most of the rest of the first half, you only muster a field goal. Meanwhile, Salter went multiple possessions in a row without a passing yard. By a certain point in this first half, he was still only at 12 passing yards in this game prior to a possession that saw them get a field goal from Mata Jr., who's also returning. Like, do you know how fucking crazy that sounds? That is ridiculous. That cannot happen. Your defense is giving you as best of an effort as they can. They are giving you the green light to go full throttle on offense on this team, and you don't even compound on those opportunities. It's a damn shame. And that is exactly where Georgia Tech thrives at. As much as I can make fun of that offense, that is the fucking game plan. If you're letting them linger around in a game like this, that playing style is inevitably going to wear you out and disorient you. And while that would not happen in the first half, you could see signs of it happening. I mean, the Colorado defense was just getting gashed in the run game. And it was a by committee system. I mean, it wasn't even just, Jamal Haynes, rather. But they also had Rivers getting it going. They had Haynes King rushing for a little bit as well. They had Hosley rushing in for a little bit. And eventually, Burr was able to get them on the board with a field goal of their own. Then their next possession would see them completely bend on the defensive side yet again. I mean, their penalties were potentially costly when it came to Notre Dame's side at multiple points. Their offensive line at Folsom Field, man, they were just they weren't ready for the moment. They had at least 5 or 6 penalties against just them in this game. But it didn't hurt them here. Because King, he settled down a little bit. He started to get composed. They had a few RPO plays going. They had some routes to Stockton in there as well. And, while they were short, eventually it set them up for bigger plays. That started to play with the minds of the Colorado defense. And eventually they were just biting on everything. Haynes King would eventually get in for a rushing touchdown here to tie up the ball game. And then, as I mentioned, the Buffaloes would respond, but the Yellow Jackets offense was just ramping it up from there. 3 drives to cap off this first half would see them get 3 scores, capped off by another field goal drive, in which Haynes King, yet again, and Jamal Haynes would just completely demoralize this defense with a rushing attack. And I tell you, man, if you thought that Sorsby was just completely gashing that team in the rushing game, wait until you see the Friday action from a couple of these quarterbacks, including King. But we'll get to that in a bit. Nevertheless, while it was not a favorable first half for either side, felt like momentum was heading in Georgia Tech's direction. And really, all they had to do was, again, stick with their game plan. This was working perfectly for them. That's exactly what they intend to do on a game-to-game basis. But again, Colorado, man, get more aggressive in the passing game. Their rushing attack was actually, promising to see. They had been struggling for years since Deion Sanders got there to establish anything concrete in the rushing game that made teams fear their offense. And they were actually formidable in that regard this game. But you had to at least get some fucking passing yards in if you're Salter. There's no excuse. You are an established veteran in your own right, and you are going through that kind of rut in a single game. Now again, both defenses to start out the half would lock each other up. But Salter would get another short pass, at least, to Taylor, who would then just extend the play for the longest time, using his speed and shifty ability to pick up a first down and also just get 21 yards to push them near Georgia Tech's red zone. They would get a few runs in and would actually get inside the 10-yard line. But for Salter to lose more yards after Welch also lost yards on a run, that just certainly hurt them. You'd be trying to score a touchdown in this situation, and yet they had no other choice but to settle here. Meanwhile, the Haynes were in their element here. Like, Haynes was just firing. Again, maybe shorter passes, maybe there were some checkdowns, but it got the damn job done. It forced the defense to commit to some semblance of the pass at least. And yet again, Haynes King, when the third quarter was coming to a close, he was able to get in for a 17-yard touchdown, nearly unscathed. All of a sudden, Georgia Tech's got the momentum. And they have a chance to truly take over in the fourth quarter, but not before Caden Salter would actually display his own experience. Finally, for like one of the first times in the game, he wanted to draw the contact. Like, this drive would see him just take multiple runs up the gut, even though his build wouldn't really give off the vibe of him being like a physical runner. He made it a point to just play in that manner. And it paid off, because on this 3rd and 5, for example, Caden Salter would get in for a rushing touchdown. Literally, you have multiple guys from this Georgia Tech defensive line trying to tackle him, putting multiple bodies on him, and yet he was able to break right through it anyways. That's certainly something you got to respect. And, yeah, I mean, hey, man. Like, there we go, that kind of moment. Still, though, there were some problems even within this. Like, they would manage to get a stop on Georgia Tech's offense, despite Haynes King still trying to establish himself as a superior quarterback. But Salter's thing is, like, he will scramble to create plays. He is definitely an improvising quarterback. There's no question about that. And honestly, it was great to get to see that on national television. Liberty's obviously not going to get that kind of attention. This is stuff that he was doing at times last season. But something that I noticed about him, he has a tendency to just overshoot some of the most optimal passes for any quarterback. Like, it's almost like his eyes get so wide open when he sees a receiver in perfect stride with a chance to make a big play. They literally glow. And there's just something with the coordination where he sees it and he locates it, but he does not have the proper accuracy to get it there, or he puts way too much power on the pass to where it ends up being out of the receiver's reach. Like, there were multiple times, like at least 4 times in this game, including one on this punt, and one also in the final drive of the game as well. He's just got a receiver wide open. And yet, the rhythm isn't all there to where he just completely misses the pass. Those are the worst for any quarterback. But it feels like with the way that this game ended up panning out, with Colorado, again, not scoring for the rest of the game in a drive that ended in a punt, and also with just a typical end-of-game possession, those passes are certainly going to hurt him to this point still. Like, you're definitely going to want those back if you're in his shoes. And Georgia Tech, hey, after that, they were able to have a chance. And honestly, the way that they'd been fighting for this much time in this game, despite having 3 turnovers in the first 3 possessions, they couldn't have asked to be in a much better spot than this. It was all Haynes King. and just one play of Jamal Haynes. He ran and he ran and he ran. And again, the fact that this man Haynes King had already been the leading rusher for the Yellow Jackets offense in this game, it didn't occur to you that maybe you should have like a spy on him or something? And even if they did do it, it clearly wasn't a good enough job. Tell me why on 2nd and 6, this man Haynes King was able to get a 45-yard touchdown run unscathed. That could have potentially, if things were to stand, that might have been the dagger play right there. Why the fuck? Why? Why in the hell would you allow him to run unscathed for a potential game-winning touchdown? And at that point, he had like 19 rushes for 156 yards and 3 touchdowns, bro. Like, no. Just no. It's not to say that Colorado wouldn't have a chance to respond, but in one of the more controversial sequences, they would bungle it completely. And at that point, like, they wasted all of their timeouts. Or at least, no, they didn't waste all their time. They had 2 timeouts, right? It wasn't over, you know. Again, in college football, when you're inside the 2-minute warning, first downs bring upon a stoppage of the clock, and they start on the signal of the ref. So you have time to cool down if you need to, get your play in order, and go from there. You have that added advantage along with 2 timeouts. It's going to be difficult to drive a full 75 yards, but it's still manageable within a minute and 7 seconds. And yet all that time just withered away completely. Completely. Because you don't call a timeout on the first play after Welch lost 2 yards. I can kind of excuse that one. You know, I get it. It's fair. You're just trying to hustle to the line in that point. I feel that. But to not call a timeout after this next play, because at this point Salter gets the pass and they tackle the receiver at the 34-yard line. At this point, there's around 44 seconds left. And as it's winding down, they're not doing anything. Clock's ticking down. 33 seconds, 32 seconds. They're still not calling a timeout. We get all the way down to fucking 25 seconds. And around that point, they snap the ball. Then you have Caden Salter trying to scramble out of the pocket. And yet, he's just trying to do all this fucking dancing around. He's literally picked up the first down. He runs backwards, trying to get out of bounds, and that ends up taking even more time. And before you know it, you get down from about 40 seconds after the first play in this particular sequence ends. You have 40 seconds. From that point, you just called a timeout, at least one of them. Instead, they let that play take 22 seconds to get off. And now they're down to just 18 with 1 timeout still in their own territory. And I'm like, what the hell is Deion Sanders thinking about? They just made it that much more difficult on themselves. One of the next plays would see Caden Salter actually get a pretty decent deep pass attempt to Miller. And he was open. He was open. You know, they're playing over the top, trying to prevent the deep ball. He was fucking open. He had him. And he overshot him yet again. Eventually, the Buffaloes would lose this game. Georgia Tech would win 27-20. They were just stood up at the 50-yard line. They couldn't do much of anything from there. And yet that sequence would have changed completely. I would think so, at least. If you just call 1 timeout after 40 seconds, I'm sure that they'd be able to drive down much further into Georgia Tech's territory and get an easier chance at a shot play for a touchdown. I'm sure of it. There's no guarantee, But, I mean, come on, man. So, that was certainly a fucking gaffe from Deion Sanders. But, you do have to credit Georgia Tech with the win here. I mean, Haynes King had a pretty solid game. I think they mentioned that he was like the first ACC quarterback with 100 passing yards, 100 rushing yards, and 3 or more rushing touchdowns in a season opener in quite some time. So to have that kind of historical connotation is pretty nice in Haynes King's situation. Like 156 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns for him on 19 runs. It was so predictable. That is what they are trying to do all the time. In Colorado, again, the defense was solid for the early part of this game. But a combination of just undisciplined plays, getting tired and worn out because of not only their style of play, but also the fact that they saw the field so many times because of these quick 3-and-out and quick offensive possessions. It didn't fare well for them by the end of this one. There's not much to say for the receiving game because that is not the strong suit of this Georgia Tech team. And they're going to let you know it. I mean, 320 yards, even with Colorado's rushing attack, looking more improved, I would say. Still, they didn't even come close to what the hell Georgia Tech was doing on the ground. They had damn near double the fucking yards as a team. And on 15 more rushes at that. While averaging 7 fucking yards a carry. Like, that is just insane work. And again, guys like Rivers, Rutherford, and Stockton are receivers. That's what Georgia Tech does a lot of too, you know. They are going to run the triple option scheme. They're going to get receivers involved in these attempts. And they're just not going to deviate from that at all. I don't know how that'll fare for them in other ACC games, but, you know, it worked eventually here. It took some time to establish it, but they got the job done. As for Salter, he left a lot to be desired. You know, there's a lot of promise there. 2 total touchdowns and 202 total yards. I think it was a good move for Colorado to pick him up from Liberty as a transfer. But there's a lot more that he needs to show. Because the Colorado squad, simply, they need to show that they can win big games this year. They need to display that they can do that. Especially with the way that their season ended and with the fact that they don't really play that well against top 25 competition. Now, obviously, Tech is not a top 25 team, but they come from a very formidable power conference. You've got to be able to stand your ground in games like this. You have to. Like, I think this is something that they can recover from. But things like this, if they get too out of hand, this could totally affect their season. That's not even an overreaction thing. Because, again, they should probably be fine. But they got to get a handle on that, like, right now. Because there were so many opportunities, missed opportunities. I can't sit here and play the shoulda, woulda, coulda game. You just needed to go out and do it, and you didn't execute enough. So that is on you. Like, they certainly, like, there's no overturning it. Georgia Tech, when push came to shove, they own their asses in the clutch. And that is a great example of a team that's just going to do whatever they can to fight hard. Like, you got to give them their respect there. Man, oh man. All right, moving on to Auburn and Baylor. And, I mean, I'm coming off talking about masterclass rushing attacks from Sorsby and Haynes King. You can make the argument that out of those three quarterbacks, Jackson Arnold might have had the most complete game of the three. Not only was he dominant on the ground, but he quite literally protected the ball. I'm not going to sit here and act like they asked him to do the most in terms of throwing it. But he did not put the ball in harm's way. Like, every single pass that he dialed up was giving a pretty good chance to any receiver of it to get a handle on it, get down, and get the yardage that they needed to get. And that was literally just automatic throughout the entire game. That rushing attack for the Tigers in this game, they were just completely in sync. And it wasn't even just Arnold. All these damn running backs that they had were just dominating the fucking game. They also had Eric Singleton Jr. as well, who is, ironically enough, a Georgia Tech transfer, getting involved for a couple carries of his own. And it was a slower burn, to say the least, but Auburn, for majority of the game, after a little while, had control. You know, it's not to say that Baylor wasn't fighting, but especially when you look at the disparity in the rushing attack between the two. Because, again, this is a matchup between another couple teams who have a strong suit in terms of running the football. I mean, they had a player in Bryson Washington returning for them from last season where he had, like, the most rushing yards as a true freshman in Baylor school history. So, you know, there were moments where he was actually making some good plays. And that's par for the course. Sawyer Robertson, also senior quarterback for them returning, is a bit of his dual threat in his own right. But that element was virtually non-existent for them. You know, that would certainly aid them in terms of throwing the football. And while they were able to accomplish, you know, some success, at least a few times in this game, the reality is that if they were made to be into passing squad, they weren't going to stand a chance against this Auburn team. Like, literally, first touchdown in this game, you have Jackson Arnold getting in for an easy 24-yard run. Like, a lot of these just saw him get in completely untouched, and it was just insane to watch. Like, he had that kind of rushing performance on fucking steroids, and yet Baylor still decided, hey, we're just going to let him run free. We're not going to put any sort of coverage on him whatsoever. Now, again, in terms of some of his passes, like Sawyer Robertson, again, by his own standard, actually had a decent game. If they would have had any rushing element, this probably would have been a little closer. I mean, this pass right here, this touchdown pass to Prentice was an absolute fucking dime. Got it right in the middle of the fucking seam. You know, defenders were trying to recover. They stood no chance. It was a fucking laser beam right in that area of the field on the left side. And they were able to make it a 17-10 ball game at that point. That would be the score heading into the half. And, you know, a few stops for Baylor at that point had them feeling a little bit of momentum. But Jackson Arnold was literally just playing with his foot. Like, there would be moments where he's just juking people out of their shoes in the backfield. I'm like, that shit's gotta be fucking embarrassing, man. There is no way that should be going down. Got to a point where he had more rushing yards than Baylor's entire team. Like, he fucking dominated. And to think that this man transferred from Oklahoma to essentially stay in the SEC, this could be looking like a very good start for Auburn, at least. I mean, Baylor's not a slouch of a football team, even if the Big 12 is a chaotic conference. But, I mean, goodness gracious, man. Desperation would certainly force the Bears to make something happen, especially after this rushing touchdown by Cobb. And, again, you got to credit Robertson. They were able to battle back and get some pretty great plays of their own rights. Like this pass he had to Hawkins from 36 yards out, or another one to Hawkins from 13 yards out. Eventually, they were able to get in because they had to go for it on 4th down. You know, that Tigers defense was tightening up inside the 5-yard line prior to the third quarter ending. And this is just a really tough moment for them to deal with. Because as soon as they get in from this 4-yard touchdown by none other than Knighton, you're thinking that you're in the clear. All you have to do is just get a single stop on defense and you're Gucci. Like, there's so much time left. You hadn't even hit the 4th quarter yet, and you've got this down to a 1-score ball game. You think that you're golden. No, you aren't. Auburn would literally see their player get a fucking 98-yard kick return touchdown. Pleasant. Completely unscathed. That was a horrible display from the coverage team. Like, they literally snatched the momentum right back away from them with that play alone. And that was certainly going to be the deciding factor in this one. Now, again, Robertson would fire up with a response of his own. Like, he was able to get some pretty elite passes to his wide receivers, like Trigg and like Wilson. Trigg would then get in for a 4-yard touchdown once more. But not to be outdone, Jackson Arnold would come storming right back with another 27-yard touchdown run on 4th down. Like, at that point, again, you know that they are feeling all the confidence in Arnold. And honestly, that's fair for the Tigers. The fact that they can express that in him is a great thing, because, man, they wouldn't have that same mentality with Peyton Thorne last season. Oh, y'all don't want to remember Peyton Thorne with that team. So the fact that they already trust Jackson Arnold in that situation is definitely revealing. And he certainly made good on that promise. Like, he literally just got that touchdown with ease. He wasn't fazed at all. And, you know, he had his struggles at Oklahoma. You know, obviously he is still a young player trying to go through the process. But, you know, the jury at that point was already out on him. And yet, on that showcase, like, he might have found some favor with a great number of people once more with the performance that he put on. Baylor would eventually turn the ball over on downs after just giving it their best effort. And again, you know, effort is always going to help, but sometimes that just is not enough. You got to actually go out and execute. And they didn't even do it nearly to the same level. Like, again, for Robertson, maybe, again, it is a fine game. You know, you'll see the score, you'll look at it and say that it's a lot of garbage time numbers. And honestly, like, again, if you didn't watch the game, I can't necessarily blame you for saying that. But nah, this was competitive. Auburn just had an extra step. They were always one step ahead of them, bro. Like, it was as simple as that. You know, 27 to 48 passing for 419 yards and 3 touchdowns. Wilson had 8 receptions for 134 yards, and Trigg had 99 yards on 7 catches and a touchdown of his own. As for Auburn and Jackson Arnold, bro, man, again, balanced game. Balanced game for him. I kid you not. 17 passes and 16 rushes for him. And again, he kept the ball out of harm's way. He just remained to be a dominant force throughout the entire game and a true leader of this team. Yes, he had 137 yards on the ground by himself and 2 rushing touchdowns. But the team as a whole, like this unit, was just absolutely ridiculous this game. And if they can get shit like that done in SEC competition, Auburn could be a sneaky team. I mean, 51 rushes combined for 308 yards and 4 touchdowns on 6 yards of carry. That is demoralizing for any defense, no matter what. No matter who you are or what kind of talent you have. If you're getting done like that, you are going to be in a position where you'd want to change up every single thing you were doing on that side of the ball. Every single thing. And I could imagine that Baylor would want to do it. I mean, defense has always been a struggle for them in these sorts of games. And they're going to have to get back to the drawing board for next week because there's just no way that you can allow this if you're them. But this was a great slate of Friday night games. And that would take us into the Saturday action. Starting out with none other than Ohio State versus Texas. A game that has been marked on the calendar since the schedule was announced all those months ago. The game that every single person on both sides and everyone in between had been waiting for. We would finally get to see if Arch Manning could match the hype and if Julian Sain had anything to say about it as well. We would get to see how these teams would perform against each other. You know, they definitely had a lot of players go over to the NFL, but a lot of their marquee players were still there. You know, obviously the Jeremiah Smiths, the Caleb Downs, the Colin Simmonses, and the Quintrevion Wisners, along with C.J. Baxter even. He wasn't healthy for last year's game. He was out with injury for pretty much most or all of that season. So it would be a very interesting showcase to say the least. And, it was a defensive stalemate, and I absolutely fucking loved it, bro. You know, people are going to go ahead and say that it wasn't a great game at all because they didn't put up the craziest amount of offensive numbers in this one. And again, if you prefer offense, that's fine. But guess what? Not every single fucking game can be a shootout and a barn burner like it's fucking mid-2010s Big 12 college football, bro. It can't happen like that. You're going to have games where the best face off against the best and struggle to beat the other. That's going to happen. And there's nothing you can do about it. You just got to sit back and watch it unfold. And it was definitely intriguing to watch. Like, you know, there's a lot of different emotions that come with watching such a defensive match. And again, I will definitely get into how this game looked for Arch Manning and Julian Sain in a second. But can we just give credit to both fucking defenses? Like, yes, I'm definitely glad to see that Ohio State made them put them fucking horns down. I'm glad to see it. But in a very serious note, you have to give credit to both defenses. Seriously. Like, they made life so difficult for both quarterbacks. And when it came to rushing as well, even though Texas had a stark advantage, with some of their returning guys over some of the guys that Ohio State deployed, like West Virginia transfer C.J. Donaldson and also James Peoples. Every single yard was fucking earned, not given. Every single one. Every single one. Both teams just going at each other, because it's not to say that these offenses weren't aggressive either. Like, they were trying. There were multiple attempts for both teams on fourth down. Like, do you get how that sounds? You're working at every single point just to try to pick up another first down or pick up a touchdown. Ironically enough, the first touchdown of the game came off of a C.J. Donaldson fourth down conversion at essentially the 1 yard line. And although that's tough for Texas to not get that goal line stand, there's something to be said about making a team work that hard to reach that point. Sain was under pressure on multiple occasions, and the poor redshirt freshman had nothing to do about it, especially when facing off against a guy like Holland Simmons. He is a dominant force. He would have some gaps in this game. One of the penalties he actually had did lead to that aforementioned fourth down touchdown score by C.J. Donaldson. Like, that was a specific drive. It may not have gotten extended if he didn't do that. But aside from that, he had a very great game in terms of pressuring him and just making him uncomfortable. Coverage-wise, outside of a few mistakes here and there, they did a pretty decent job. Okay, Jeremiah Smith did still inevitably get his. And yes, they were trying to double team and triple team the hell out of him. But again, that is exactly what they were trying to do. It worked in their favor for the most part. You don't want to make it any easier on Sain to just dump it off at will to the best receiving target they have on the team. You're going to want those other guys to step up. And step up they did, although you can't necessarily control Carnell Tate making the just fucking crazy catch he did in that game. You can't control that. But even on that play, still, for as great as that play was for Ohio State to get that touchdown to put them up to 14-0, the effort was relentless, bro. Like, the defender on that play, because Tate initially makes the catch, he still tries to jar it out, and he almost does. But Tate had enough concentration to reel it back in. That's still pretty damn good defense. That's just better offense in that situation. And there's nothing you can really do about it. And still, even when Texas was actually trying to storm back a little bit, the defense kept them in it the whole time. It never really felt like Ohio State, even with having a 14-0 lead, it never felt like the game was out of reach. Texas always gave them a chance to respond, and they made it even greater of a likelihood for them to do so, with them getting another stop en route to the final possession by Arch Manning and that team. And even though it didn't go their way, you know what I'm saying, they gotta hang their hats on the fact that they were able to keep up and keep pace in this game. It is a little demoralizing, but, they deserve a lot of credit. Same thing goes to the Matt Patricia-led squad at Ohio State. I mean, my goodness. They were fucking disgusting on that front. Arch Manning, even though he did have a few cases where he was relatively unscathed, namely one of the long scampers that he had in the first half, and also the damn touchdown pass he had to Livingstone, was a work of fucking art. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. He had enough time to throw it. He dialed that shit up. And Livingstone made a hell of a fucking catch on Matthews Jr., who, honestly, talking about him, that motherfucker might have been MVP. That motherfucker might have been MVP, bro. He was flying all over the field, dude. Between the interception he got on Arch Manning, which was the only turnover of this game, and also the swat that he had that nearly led to another interception by Sonny Styles. Bro, he was all over the place. He was a force to be reckoned with, man. And, he had definitely gotten some reps last season, but he wasn't a starter yet. So, this is his first true game getting those kinds of reps. And he balled the hell out. Arch Manning was uncomfortable from the very jump of this match. And again, that's a testament to just how much pressure they were getting on him. And how good the coverage was for the most part. Even when he did have those chances to scramble, man, it didn't come without a cost. Lorenzo Styles Jr. just walloped him on a third down conversion that he had via a scramble. They gave him the first down, but he knocked his ass into the sideline, bro. And that kind of brand of physicality is what both teams are really predicated on here, even if they still don't seem to take Ohio State seriously in that regard. They definitely fucking got it, and they proved it in this matchup. Usually in years past, man, if they're being held to that low of an offensive output, you couldn't always rely on their defense to get the job done. But that has shifted so greatly over the past few seasons, whether it be Jim Knowles or now Matt Patricia. And again, Texas's offense was also aggressive, going for multiple fourth downs on their end. But the fact that they were able to stop them on that second fourth down attempt, where they tried to give it to C.J. Baxter in the first quarter, or more importantly, another drive where in the third quarter they are on the verge of scoring, and yet they manage to hold their ground and get a goal line stand on Arch Manning right there. That kind of shit can be game changing. Not only did that hold them from scoring, but that stand alone, again, a few, possessions after that, they were eventually able to go up to 14-0. And again, while it wasn't necessarily out of the realm of possibility for Texas to come back, holding them off like that gave Ohio State a sense of comfortability, at least. And again, we've seen this time and again. They reference Penn State and the fact that they were held to a goal line stand last year that changed the complexity of that game. I thought more so, personally, even though I recognize that happened, I thought more so of what happened facing off against Nebraska with that goal line stand. If they don't make that play, there's a chance that Ohio State somehow loses to Nebraska last season. And we're talking about a completely different everything when it comes to that team. Would they still be able to make that run if they suffered that loss? Who really knows? And yet they got it done, and they answered the call when they needed to at every point. Even on that fourth down to end the game. Injuries was also being utilized. His production ramped up over the course of the game, I would think. That they probably should have found a way to get him involved a little more. He is regarded as one of the best tight ends in the nation for a reason. And there's a reason why he transferred from Cal to come to here as well. The fact that Caleb Downs, no matter how Arch Manning threw the ball in that situation, the fact that he had enough strength to get him down on impact and prevent him from gaining any more yardage to potentially get the first down and seal the fucking deal. Like, that is what it's all about, man. And at the end of the day, again, maybe it wasn't an offensive masterpiece, but bro, you have to look back and appreciate just how fucking unrelenting the defense was. Like, it was an absolute masterclass in that regard. I shit you not. It was a great game. I think it personally answered the fucking call. It was well worth the wait, in my estimation. But to get on to Arch Manning and Saeem, just talk about them in tandem, because I'd approach this game in a little bit of a different way. Manning, look, man, did he struggle? He absolutely struggled. You know, they mentioned something that, like, 37% of his 30 attempts were off-target throws. And at multiple points, whether it be him, because something that was really tough, like, what was the chemistry looking like with Moore Jr.? First damn play of the game, he underthrows it to him. And then later on, he continues to, like, overshoot him. They just couldn't lock that in for some reason. And I didn't totally understand that. If they would have made that happen, you could argue that this could be a little bit of a different game. Like, I don't really know how good of a receiver Livingstone is, but you're probably relying on other people here. Even Ryan Wingo was able to get more involved over the course of a game, but, you know, like, Arch Manning was definitely unsettled, and I think that was to be expected. Not to mention some of the throws he made as well, even though they were, like, in the general vicinity of people. Like, I just don't know what the tendency was for him to, like, do all these sidearm throws and shit. And I think that last drive encapsulated it completely. Because, like, he would short arm some of these damn throws here. Like, the fact that you are in a situation where you're, like, the consistency was weird. Because you come off of that possession firing a dime to Livingstone. And then this possession here, you open it up with a needle-threading pass to Injuries, with Lorenzo Styles Jr. yet again trying to knock his fucking head off. Like, that was a great pass. They were in great position from there to potentially make something happen and tie up this ball game. Yet everything after that just went to shit. Jack Injuries wasn't able to catch the pass because he short-armed this. Ryan Wingo was wide open on a drag route, and this man sidearms the throw, throws it behind Ryan Wingo, and he doesn't have a chance to adjust to it. And then even on the fourth down play, people were making an argument as to, like, okay, he probably could have led Injuries towards the boundary and give it to him that way so that Caleb Downs doesn't have the correct angle of pursuit to tackle him from. And that's a fair point as well. Like, you know, there were certainly things that he missed in this game. He was certainly not on time with a good number of his reads. And the interception to Matthews Jr. was a bit of an underthrow on his regard. You have to credit Matthews with being able to undercut the route, but it was not an accurate pass. And yet, he still did some things well. They also mentioned that in the fourth quarter, he went 4 of 7 for 105 yards and a touchdown pass on passes of more than 5 air yards. Like, he handled his business, and there is something to that if he can continue building on it in games to follow. Because the fact that he'd been struggling for that much time and then managed to break through in clutch time and get a few responses, get a few solid reads. Like, there is clearly potential there. There are flashes of potential greatness in the future. As I mentioned, that pass was a fucking beauty to Livingstone for that touchdown. That's a great one. That pass to Injuries was spectacular. But those misses hurt just as badly. And it eventually did cost Texas this game. He also recognizes that. He's not oblivious to that. So I would just say, again, when it comes to Manning, I guess you will have some Texas fans be disappointed. I think that's fair. But, it's a standard game for any quarterback making their debut as a starter. It is okay. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad either. There are things that he did absolutely well, and there are things that he can learn from in time. As he continues to get the reps as a starter, he will learn. He will learn. And again, they addressed this during the game via broadcast. Because, I guess it was either Gus Johnson or Joel Klatt. I guess they were talking about it together. They're mentioning that you're asking him to go in to the horseshoe and face off against a dominant Ohio State team and potentially come out with a win while looking as perfect as a quarterback could possibly look. And that's just not attainable. It's not attainable. He did fine. But these niggas out here, whether it be certain fans, whether it be certain analysts in the media or whatever, it's on them. They did this shit. They can't sit here and be surprised that he didn't play well. But don't go out and try to make him out to be this, just turn this into something completely negative when you projected all this shit on him in the first place. Simply because of the fact that he is a Manning. And it is genuinely unfair from that regard. Talking all this stuff about how your family name would reflect on you when I was talking about the Avery Johnson situation from last week. This is that on fucking crack, and he's not even asking for any of this attention at all. You're placing this on him. And he hasn't even had the proper time to get ready for a moment like this. You think he's going to be the next thing since sliced bread automatically in week 1 with this being his first opponent, and you genuinely expected him to not only dominate in this game, as other people would say. Some people were expecting a blowout. Some people were expecting him to come out looking like a Heisman candidate already. And quite simply, to all those people, it's just fucking ridiculous that they would think that way. I think over time, as Arch Manning settles in, he can become exponentially better than he was. And there will come times where he'll be prepared for big games like this. But that's just it. People were so quick over the course of this entire offseason when it was said that Arch Manning was going to become the starter to label him as this next great quarterback. They already have him projected to be a top player in next year's draft, and you don't even necessarily know if he's going to be ready to enter the draft. Right? You have to give him time to settle into this role. You have to give him that space. No quarterback is going to be able to succeed without a little bit of preparation in play here. And they were truly just, again, I can't necessarily say that they're wrong to do it. The projection game is something that's just going to take place all the time. But you have got to let him settle in that role. In the same vein, Saeem, let's talk about him. He is also a player that will grow with time. Was he perfect in this game? Hell no. He did, however, protect the ball. He didn't turn the ball over a single time. From that perspective, he did every single thing he needed to do. And also, a lot of his incompletions were via drops. He made smart reads. But, you can't necessarily help Jeremiah Smith and Max Clare combining for like 3 drops or something in the first few possessions of the damn game. As great players, great of a player as they both are, like, you cannot have that happen. And that can't really be blamed on Saeed. He's certainly going to have to get better with diagnosing pressure as well. But again, for any Ohio State fan who might be a little discontent with his performance, again, Texas is a damn good defense in their own right. And you're asking him, again, yes, with home field advantage, you're asking him to look absolutely perfect against them. And it's just not that simple. Not to mention that at least Arch Manning had the benefit of having a nice rushing attack to compound his issues. And also has the benefit of being a damn great running quarterback himself. I would think that Saeed is a dual threat, but that wasn't really on the most display here. And when it came to the actual running backs here, they combined for like 2.9 yards per carry or so. That is not really much to go off of. It's just, I don't know. There's a lot of potential there with him as well, and he just needs the time to settle in and work his way up to that. But you cannot rush that. Saeed, again, compared to Manning, is not really getting the same kind of treatment, of course. But still, it's got to be something that they work for, man. You can't try to project that on them so early on. That's all I would say for this one. But again, like I said, great game. Even if it wasn't to the offensive standard that people would like. It was a spectacular game to sit back and watch. And hey, the defending champions would win. I think it was like the first time since the 1990s that the number 1 preseason AP Top 25 team lost in their season opener to a defending champion. So that's interesting. All right, moving on to Syracuse and Tennessee. Ah, man. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so the score of this one is probably going to be a little bit deceiving, but Tennessee, in all honesty, man, they dominated Syracuse. And that's not necessarily hard when you factor in that Angeli, the transfer quarterback from Notre Dame, was starting just his 3rd career college game. And it looked like it. Oh my goodness. Tennessee's defense is also great as well. So when you combine that, oh my goodness, they made him look so subpar. Like, yo, no, man. It was bad. Like, yes, there were some solid plays that he made. He was able to get like multiple in-breaking routes to Cook the second to get him some scores in this ball game. But aside from that, man, it was rough everywhere else. One of their saving graces, though, was the performance of Willis. Now, yeah, he definitely had to get some volume in. But for him to have 91 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game on a day where not much else was going right for them on either side of the ball, like, there's something to that. Everything else was rough, though. They were on his ass, bro. At multiple points, Angeli had no time to throw, and there were some cases where it got so bad, he just made some of the worst possible decisions you could make. Like, how is it that you forced Tennessee to fumble on another miscommunication on an option exchange? How the fuck do you get into a situation where you get the ball there and you manage to get a sack fumble for a scoop 6. You give that up. How? How the fuck does that happen? Then, to make matters worse, you open up the third quarter of the game with a pick thrown to one of their returning guys in Talander. Like, how the hell could you have possibly expected to make this a game? If that's the type of bullshit that you're doing as a supposed experienced player in this system, it's just not a great look. But as for Tennessee, how about it, man? Look at what Aguilar did. Man, put on a damn great performance here. A great performance. It wasn't perfect, but hey, they ain't missing a beat without having Amuliava there at all. Like, his passes were just excellent for the most part. And to have that balanced attack along with the way that they were utilizing their rushing attack as well, that is what fits their offense to a T. It worked like a charm throughout this entire game. 247 yards and 3 touchdowns for him without a single pick on 57.1% completion. And some of these catches were completely contested, but the experience of Aguilar allowed him to exploit the right points at the right time. And more often than not, the shit worked. Like, Staley, for example, was able to just burn a nigga over the top with a nasty post route. Backed up in zone coverage, that shit didn't matter. Like, he cooked them. And he ended up getting a 73-yard touchdown on that specific drive. Like, there's just no way you can get lit up like that, bro. That's definitely embarrassing. But, hey, they will take it. And it really just kept going. Like, Thomas as well, as a sort of wide receiver and running back hybrid, like, he also had a pretty good all-around game, to say the least. He had a reception touchdown and also 99 total yards on 13 touches. Like, that's just incredibly insane for him. Bishop, one of their other running backs, because again, they're trying to run a bot committee system without having Sampson back there now. He also had 82 rushing yards on the ground with a touchdown of his own. And they seem to be in good hands if they can operate in that way. It's going to be a tall task to fill, but hey, man. You know what I'm saying? If they can handle it that way, shit, man. All right. Like, literally perfect balance for them. 247 passing yards and also 248 rushing yards. You definitely can't say the same thing for Syracuse, though. And I don't know. Something tells me that Angeli is not going to keep that job. Like, yes, they're clearly going to give him a chance, but I don't really know about his odds here. It's definitely a rough way to start out the season, but they made the schedule. They asked for that kind of competition. And I guess offensively they hung in there as best as they could, but Tennessee was just on a completely different level here. And they own their asses completely. So that is fucking tough. That's tough. Moving on to Mississippi State versus Southern Miss, and yes, you heard that right. Now, honestly, I don't know why this game was as competitive as it was in the first half. It was very weird. Like, Mississippi State came out firing. They managed to get a pretty damn good touchdown to Sadhu Trial, who is actually a real person. Yes, the tight end from England was actually the first player to get on the board for them on a 55-yard bomb from Shapen. It looked like they were going to keep that going, and it also helped that they managed to get an interception on Braxton later on in the first quarter while taking a 10-3 lead. But after a while, I don't know, their offense just started to cool down. They weren't able to establish the run at all. And Southern Miss, they were getting a little lucky out there. Like, not only did the quarterback start to just fire lasers all over the fucking field, and not only did these wide receivers begin to bring down some of the crazier catches imaginable, they would end off the drive in a relatively similar way. Like, it's third down and goal. They have no other choice but to line up in a shotgun formation because doing anything else would be predictable at that point. And Braxton throws it over to the left side of the field. It gets deflected in the end zone by one of the Mississippi State defenders. And it gets tipped up again. But just before another Mississippi State defender can potentially make a play on it or knock it down, out of nowhere, one of their receivers comes in and he manages to catch it while falling to the ground for a touchdown. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, I guess. And they were able to tie up the ball game from there. Now, Mississippi State would have a little bit of an advantage. They would get a field goal to close out the first half. And from there, everything else ended up going on in their favor. I mean, it just became a blowout right after that. You know, they had back-to-back touchdown drives. Fluff Bothwell, would get in for a touchdown on multiple drives back-to-back, while they would also just increase the lead to 24 after they would get in a rushing touchdown from Booth following another interception from Braxton this time. And I guess they would try to, just make the score a little more palatable to the eye in getting a late touchdown on a 93-yard drive, but that really didn't end up mattering all that much. Mississippi State will win this game 34-17 and just stick it to the Conference USA-based team. So from here, Shapen would have 270 passing yards, a touchdown, and an interception on 76.5% completion. This isn't really that bad, honestly. Their rushing attack had 188 yards on 4.5 yards a carry and 3 total touchdowns as well. Mississippi State will definitely be looking to reestablish that over time. They've been struggling in that regard, and as a result, they've been one of the worst teams in the SEC. They've just not had very good seasons in the past few years. But if they can generate that kind of ability from their backs, then, they'll be in for something this season. As for Southern Miss, Braxton would have 257 total yards and 2 touchdowns passing with a pick as well. Hey, man. It is Southern Miss. Again, things could change for Mississippi State, but hey, they won their season opener, and they could ride that momentum into the next week. We'll see how that ends up going for them. But how about a 21-point third quarter for them as well? It's pretty interesting stuff. All right, moving on to Florida State versus number 8 ranked Alabama. Oh my goodness. Coming into this game, for context, man, Thomas Castellanos was talking that hot shit in the offseason, man. He was saying that they wouldn't have Nick Saban to save them, and bruh, everybody got on his ass. I saw that, and I was thinking, this man is delusional as fuck. There's no way he just said that. The pressure was on, and people were just waiting for him to either prove himself or completely embarrass himself in this game. That was the sentiment of a lot of people. I don't think there was really a lot of in between, although some people would probably just be very happy to watch and see how things unfolded. And let's just say that Thomas Castellanos, he backed that shit up. completely. He backed up his fucking talk. Like, I kid you not. Now, yes, Alabama did definitely get the scoring started on a solid drive from Todd Simpson, who had been making his first college start here. Josh Cuevas would get in for that touchdown. But after that, bro, it seemed like Castellanos had this team completely inspired to do damage today. I literally. Yes, he's a transfer from Boston College. He's definitely got the experience, but bruh, while that could be viewed as delusion on the outside, inside, man, you know, it felt as though they were truly believing, all of them, every single player on that team, that they could beat the hell out of Alabama. And they went to work with that same kind of energy. First damn drive saw them turn this shit around completely. Like, Thomas Castellanos didn't waste any fucking time. One of the third downs saw him just fire up a fucking spiral down the field. And it did go incomplete, but it was overturned due to penalty. They fought through all that and kept driving with Castellanos just blending in between being an absolute pest in the rushing attack and also just making great reads down the field. Squirrel White laid out on this third down with a beautiful fucking catch in his own right. And then Thomas Castellanos would just scurry right into the end zone for the FSU quarterback's first rushing touchdown in about 2 seasons at that point. That's how bad it had been for them for that stretch of time. It was not fun. And yet the fact that they are already just coming out of the gate showing you that they could be much improved from last year, that certainly gave all the Florida State fans hope. It helped, too, that their defense was stout. You know, Todd Simpson, his inexperience definitely displayed itself. But they also made life a living hell for him, too. It did not come easy at all. And they would eventually force him out of reasonable field goal range to where their kicker actually ended up missing. That would give Florida State another chance to make something happen. And boy, oh boy, oh boy. Yet again, Thomas Castellanos, you know, some of these are a bit more of like shorter passes and such. But Castellanos, when they needed him to step up and make a play, he was more than willing to. Like, he quite literally, yes, he's already short as hell. One of these third downs sees him just get incredibly low to pick up the first down. And it's like, if you're a defender, you're in a tricky spot. Castellanos is already like 5'10", 5'11", and he's getting lower to make something happen. You are probably not going to be able to do much of the same thing to the same extent. And he used that to his advantage. So eventually they get this first down. And then they get into a situation where they choose to pull out a fucking reverse play. And it worked to perfection. Whole Alabama defense collapses over to the right side of the field. And Danzy's going left. He's utilizing all the damn speed he's got. They say he's a damn track star. And honestly, that displayed itself well. You know, he was mostly untouched, and then right as people just try to get a hand on him, he's slipping off of tackles, and he got right in the end zone for a 32-yard rushing touchdown. Now Florida State has gotten themselves another lead, and they add to it with a field goal, with Castellanos leading them down there again after a punt. And, bruh, some of the plays this man was making was just insane. Like, this 14-yard run that he had on 2nd and 7 literally saw him try to get even lower for a damn near spin move. And I'm telling you right now, bruh, if he would have made that fucking play, bro, that man would have gotten put on a highlight, bro. I mean, oh my goodness, like, he's going that low to the ground and he's spinning off him like that. That would have been nasty. That would have been nasty. Momentum was all on Florida State's side. And it would get even more outlandish from there, because for a time, prior to the half ending, it started raining. It started raining in Tallahassee, and they also had a chance to get the ball back to start off the third quarter. Now, they didn't do anything with it, but they also managed to force Alabama into a nothing burger because Todd Simpson, with them trying to go for an fourth down for some reason, even though you probably could have taken your points, they did get a dump off to one of their other running backs in Riley because, again, Jam Miller had been hurt and ruled as out for this game, which definitely made Alabama take a little bit of a hit in terms of production there. But still, he gets that ball, and their linebacker in Cryer just makes a great tackle on contact to prevent him from picking up the first down. And he's right near the line of scrimmage, too. That stop, they had to check it to make sure he was short. He was short, and the crowd nearly erupts. But it didn't take them any time at all to get even louder than they were. Jalen Lucas, I think, had a 64-yard catch and run, essentially. It was a short pass, but his damn speed, he's fast as hell, too. He just gets right past the defense on that play. And he nearly scores. Then, on the next play, Holmes, one of their other running backs, gets in for a rushing touchdown to bring them up to a 24-7 lead. It couldn't be any louder in that stadium. They were absolutely excited to be witnessing what they were in this moment of time. It was insanity. Now, Alabama would have a few more chances. This game wasn't over in the slightest. One thing that had been going incredibly well for them was Ty Simpson's apparent connection with Jeremy Bernard. He went off in this game. And, yes, Ryan Williams is probably their star receiver, but of course, Florida State was trying to deploy some of the same tactics that Texas was, honestly. They're double-teaming him, they're triple-teaming him on routes where he does burn them. They're doing everything to grab him and accepting penalties and stuff like that. They just weren't really trying to get him into a rhythm at all. But that left Bernard with multiple opportunities to make plays, and he answered at every point. That kept them alive. And it also helped, too, that on a later punt in this third quarter, Lucas accidentally muffed it. It just hit the ball right off of his legs. And from there, you're thinking that Alabama has a chance to make good on that opportunity right then and right there. No, they turn the ball over on downs. Because Simpson overshoots an open Ryan Williams, unfortunately. But after yet another stop from Crimson Tide defense that was starting to tighten up a little bit, Scott would manage to get in on a nice little RPO play, just weaving around the defense and getting in for a touchdown, diving at the pylon, and it got confirmed from there. So all of a sudden, it's a 7-point ball game, but Florida State still has the momentum here. If you are the Crimson Tide, you would need to get stopped. They definitely failed to do that. Castellanos just would not relent. He just wouldn't. They go for a fourth down in their own territory, and a former Alabama player in Roydell Williams gets it. Then you manage to have Danzy get them with yet another end around. And then later on, once they get inside Alabama's red zone, they essentially game it with Oklahoma transfer Gavin Sawchuk rushing in for a 14-yard touchdown and just muscling his way through that defense for the score. At that point, Alabama was in desperation mode. You had to get something. And they failed to do so. It didn't help that Ryan Williams was also taken out of this game with a concussion following that. But still, Ty Simpson on that play just completely misread the situation. Like, he probably could have passed it. Maybe he saw something that we, as the viewers on TV, did not. But for whatever reason, he decided to run it, and he would be just short of the line to gain. So, from there, the Seminoles, after having a season straight out of a fucking dramatic movie, honestly. The way that they were last season was so bad. Like, they had literally some of their worst marks in terms of record, in terms of metrics, since 1974. You can't make that up. And yet they start out this season on the right foot, getting a loud win against Alabama in week 1. Castellanos had the game of his fucking life, man. Like 230 total yards for him with a rushing touchdown on 64.3% completion. And also, I think he started out going 8 for his spurts, 8 passes as well. You know, he is a rushing quarterback in every sense of the concept. Like, you're not really going to ask him to sling the rock all that much. But he's going to do his best to be as efficient as he can with it. And, hey, he'll definitely be able to make the big play for you if you need him to. Danzy and Sawchuk also had rushing touchdowns, as I mentioned, and Holmes also had a rushing touchdown, while Lucas led all receivers with 66 receiving yards. As for Alabama, Todd Simpson, again, as I'd say, man, he does not have the experience per se, but here's where we have a bit of an interesting situation here. Simpson has not gotten the starts himself. However, Simpson has been in this Alabama system for years. He sat behind Bryce Young when he was there. He sat behind Jalen Milroe when he was there. Even if you have redshirted for all this time, and even if you have now just been making your first career start, you've got a ton of potential film to look at and learn from over the course of these last few years in your time at Alabama. And you come out being as inaccurate as you were. Again, he didn't have an interception. He did have 2 touchdown passes. He had 254 yards, 146 of those going to Jeremy Bernard, by the way. But, man, 53.5% completion is atrocious. And again, that is a testament to just how laser tight that Florida State defense was, especially from the coverage standpoint. But, that is damn near inexcusable. Kalen DeBoer is definitely going to have some questions to answer, man. And I don't know. This is just not a great look for Alabama football. They could turn it around, but them niggas might be losing some faith after this. I'm not going to lie. As for Florida State, I don't know if they would necessarily get ranked after this. They were so terrible last season that they'd probably be a bit underrated in terms of the preseason rankings. But, if they can sustain winning with Mike Norvell Jr. in the way this squad is looking, if they can do that consistently, oh yeah, they might actually get in there. That would be quite the turnaround for them. And yet, again, that is what Castellanos is trying to invoke in this team. A winning spirit. And a mentality that, hey, if no one else is going to believe in us, we're going to believe in our damn selves. They put that on full display. And let the entire nation recognize just what the hell it is they're trying to do this year. Truly a masterful performance from Castellanos and that squad. All right. Moving on to Clemson and LSU. This was a lot of a defensive stalemate as well, to say the least. And, you have to credit Garrett Nussmeier. Yes, that's going to sound very weird coming out of my mouth, right? But he handled every single thing he needed to do. There were touch and go moments where he struggled. He definitely succumbed a few times under the pressure that the Clemson defense sent at him. I'm not saying it was a perfect game, but in a game, in a battle like this, it always helps when you can protect the damn football. And protect the damn football he did. Now, the Clemson defense made it tough on him. Like, I think A.J. Terrell's brother is on this team. Bro, he was a little bit of a ball hawk. He had some chances, but nothing came to fruition from there. And he also was able to get a pretty damn good hit on one of LSU's skill position players as well for an early fumble. But aside from that, man, it was a slow burn, and yet they stuck with it consistently. He hit the right passes he needed to get. He got the rhythm throws. Even some of the plays that got overturned were just absolute doms. Like, there was a play that he had to Barry Brown, one of their speedsters on this team, that was overturned. It honestly looked like it was a damn great catch, and they were trying to review if it was a touchdown or not. Eventually got overturned because he didn't survive the catch through the ground, and that was certainly a tough one. But still, they were able to respond even after that. And a lot of the mistakes you can't even put on him. Like, there would be another fumble here, because I don't know why the fuck they would call an RPO play in this situation going forward on fourth down prior to the end of the half. But it was a very predictable RPO pass and play. All right? And the receiver ends up catching it, but the defense is all over to the point where that gets punched down and recovered by the Clemson defense. Now, that didn't end up mattering because, again, at that point, there were only like 15 seconds left. As long as he didn't get like a scoop six out of it, there wasn't much that they could really do with getting the ball back at that time. But it prevented you from getting anything on the board. And, through it all, he was able to triumph over it. Like, they were able to come out in the third quarter, force Clemson to miss a field goal of their own, and also get Durham in the end zone for a touchdown. They would then subsequently miss a field goal themselves. Ramos has had those inconsistencies, but something weird would happen to him. He would actually get injured on this play, and I think they were mentioning that it was like non-contact. So if that becomes anything serious, that could be an issue, because for all intents and purposes, that is the best kicker that they have on the squad, even if he does have consistency problems. So you're going to want to make sure that he's all good. And, to open up the fourth quarter, in spite of all that, Nussmeier would get a great touchdown pass on a fade route to their tight end in Trudez Green. It was a stalemate from there, though. Both teams were just trying to make the other give in, honestly. Neither team would really bend to their will at all. At least defensively. Nobody scored for the rest of the game. And, Nussmeier, again, at the end of the day, he made the plays he needed to make. Simply put. For a player that I usually shit on when it comes to playing in big games because he usually shrinks up, he performed well. At least within the context of this game. And at least for a while, he was able to withstand pressure. Also, Aaron Anderson, another speedster of theirs, had a tremendous fucking outing. 99 yards receiving on the night. He was explosive as shit, too. Like, there was one catch. He just gets it, turns up the field and drags multiple defenders with him while outrunning damn near everyone else. Like, that kind of stuff is fucking crazy, bro. Also have to give LSU tremendous credit on defense for playing Klubnik the way they did. Especially when you look at the fourth down there. Because as I was seeing it from a different angle just a little bit earlier, like on that play, Klubnik actually had the post route. If he stands in the pocket, instead he scrambles out, and the corner blitz worked exactly how it was supposed to, pressuring him into making a pretty stupid decision, and all he can do at that point is just throw it away. And that right there ended the game. But I cannot say the same thing about Klubnik in this one. Here I was thinking that this dude is probably a superior quarterback to Nussmeier, and he played like absolute shit. I mean, yes, he had some easy throws that he ended up making, but he struggled. He struggled to get anything going. And that could be for a number of different reasons. But quite simply, you're projecting Klubnik to be that high of a quarterback prospect. Some of those struggles he should be able to overcome in theory, and yet he wasn't able to, simply because they sent a little bit of pressure his way. Like 19 of 38 for 230 yards and 50% completion with an interception is horrifically bad, dude. Horrifically bad to open up the season. Like, you've got to be the X factor here for your team. You are their best player in theory, and yet he definitely didn't play like it. Now, it doesn't help that their rushing attack also was just abysmal. You want to talk about like other teams struggling to enforce their will in the run all that well. Clemson didn't do shit. 19 of 32, 19 attempts combined, and 32 total yards for 1.7 yards per carry as a team in the rushing attack. And your best rusher in the game was a person who was listed as a running back, but was a former wide receiver. That's how bad this was. Like, that obviously would make life harder on Cape Klubnik, because obviously they're going to be expecting the pass at that point. If you can't establish anything to make them truly respect the run. So that just completely set them up for failure. As for Garrett Nussmeier, 230 yards on 73.7% completion and a touchdown. Like, you know, it was definitely a defensive match, to say the least. But at the end of the day, LSU came out on top and make themselves out to be the superior Tiger team and the superior Death Valley squad. Yeah. Because that was a debate for some reason too. It was definitely hostile in there, don't get me wrong, but I guess Clemson couldn't even use that to their advantage, because there were multiple situations as well they're trying to drive, and yet they're getting themselves into stupid penalties that they have no business getting into at home. Like, how the hell are you feeling that kind of pressure? They called, like, LSU struggled with that themselves. It was looking bad because they called one of their timeouts very, very early on the first drive of the game. But then you're going to do that same issue yourselves when you're trying to come back. And it's like, how the hell is that happening? The crowd is going to be silent for your offense when you're on the field. How the hell is that a struggle for you? That was just laughably bad to me. But hey, man. When all is said and done, Brian Kelly was sitting there now with a win. His very first win in a season opener with LSU. It is about damn time. Could you imagine if they would have lost that game? Man, they would get on his ass again, bro. I'm not even gonna lie to you, bro. Okay. Alright, moving on to the action from yesterday. And, Sunday. South Carolina and Virginia Tech would open things up. Yo, summation of this game. LaNorris Sellers is a fucking beast, dog. He is a fucking beast. He's got the full package. And again, people were definitely showcasing this from bits and pieces of last season, but obviously he's a freshman at that point. So, there are going to be a lot of inconsistencies that come with that. And yes, he did have some lapses in this game. Like, for a while, the Gamecocks didn't do much of anything on offense. And you got to give credit to Virginia Tech for that. It wasn't like they forced them into making any mistakes in terms of like turning the ball over or anything like that, but they did force a safety with LaNorris Sellers trying to do a little too much, and they also just made him rush a few of his passes. They also stymied the run game for the most part outside of LaNorris Sellers for at least the most of this game. Like the fact that going into the fourth quarter, this was an 8-10 ball game. I mean, hey, you'd think that both teams are honestly in an optimal spot to win. But LaNorris Sellers started off the game the same way that he finished it. Just going all out. And not only having the accuracy to make some of the craziest throws out there, but also the endurance, the strength, the overall frame, and the skill to extend plays behind the line of scrimmage. Like, there were multiple possessions where, of course, he would start off the game getting a 15-yard rushing touchdown. But even within some of these possessions that resulted in punts and things like that, there were multiple times, 3 different times at least, in this game alone, where defense had this man dead to rights in the backfield. And what does he do? He scrambles away from all of it. They don't even so much as get a hand on him. They don't even touch him. And he picks up 10, 13, 15 yards off runs. Simply doing that. It was insane to watch. Like this damn drive right here alone to end off the game would see him get a fucking 64-yard dime over to Nick Harbor. And then to end off the game, you have him getting a damn 16-yard run on third down in 13. Again, he should be sacked at that point. He throws the defender off. He scrambles out to his left. He shakes off multiple defenders and picks up the first down while potentially having room to get more because he didn't get tackled at that point. Then on a later fourth down in the same fucking drive, he gets a 6-yard run doing the same shit. Like, that is just incredible work from him. Incredible work from him in this game. And again, Harbor, like, that man is fast as hell. So the fact that he was able to get free for a 64-yard gain and fly like that in Atlanta, ironically enough, like, yo, that's just not something that they could allow. That play, along with an earlier play in the fourth quarter for South Carolina, because this man, Vicari Swain, as well, we need to talk about this. They get the punt. They are thinking that they're just going to try to get the ball back and establish something on offense to hike up the lead. They don't even need to see the field. They score within a matter of seconds because Swain swerves through the entire fucking defense, getting an 80-yard punt return touchdown. That might have single-handedly changed the game for the Gamecocks in this one. And I think that was their longest punt return touchdown since 2013. Well, their first punt return touchdown since 2013 against Michigan, and their longest ever punt return touchdown. Goodness gracious, man. Hey, bro, like, that is just so damn good. And again, South Carolina's defense as well. Man, and I'll get to Virginia Tech in a second. I'll get to them in a second, but man, they clamped the hell out of the Hokies offense. They clamped the hell out of them. Now, neither team could really get that much efficiency in the run game, but both of them managed to get over 100 yards rushing. So there's something to that. As for Sellers himself, 209 passing yards to go along with 25 rushing yards, accounting for some sack yardage, and 2 total touchdowns. While Harbor would have 99 receiving yards on 3 receptions and a touchdown. He is also a fucking track star. So again, why in the world are you leaving him that wide open on a post route? It's pretty dumb when you think about it, but okay. Nevertheless, man. As for Virginia Tech, there was literally, we wouldn't talk about, basketball. Sometimes teams just have a lid on the basket because they can't really score much of anything. How about Virginia Tech just having a lid on the end zone? They did not get a single touchdown at all. A safety and 3 field goals were their only methods of scoring in this ball game. And you have to put a lot of that on Kyron Jones. You just have to, especially when you take this into consideration. Think about this. It's not like they weren't driving. They had so many plays in opponent territory. However, when it came to throwing the ball in opponent territory and actually being a threat in that regard, Jones was nowhere to be found. But did you want to know what stat line they threw out on the ticker after the game was done? They mentioned that this man in opponent territory was 1 of 13 passing and 2 interceptions in plus territory. I don't care how good of a team you might be. If your quarterback is damn near non-existent as a playmaker for you, when you get past the 50-yard line, you're not going to succeed in doing much of anything in this game. And that's promptly what happened with Virginia Tech. Even though their defense kept it as close as they possibly could have, they did everything they needed to do except for stopping LaNorris Sellers at optimal moments of time. But maybe they could have been vaunted to do something like that if Jones just makes something happen one fucking time. That's all they're asking for. One time, bro. And you couldn't even do that. Yeah, it's not to say he didn't have some good passes. Like, I don't know if these people were related, but both of the Greens on this team were just absolutely killing. Aiden Green and also Donovan Green. I don't know if they're related. They just happen to have the same last name maybe, but they made some pretty damn good catches in this one. And it still didn't do enough for them because, again, as the field shortened up, Jones, an experienced quarterback in his own right, a more experienced quarterback than Sellers, you'd think that he'd probably be making some of the plays that Sellers was in this game as a sophomore. And he couldn't even match that at all. Like, one of these interceptions exactly is a little fucking egregious. Like, the first one, man, look, bro. How the hell are you a player as experienced as Jones is, and yet you get inside South Carolina's red zone, right? You have a third down. You scramble out to your right, and you throw it late across your body over to Johnson for him to pick it off with relative ease. Now, the second one was a bit more desperate. It's an end-of-game situation, and they just jumped the route that he's looking for to get a pick that way. But those are inexcusable plays for a player in Jones' position. It just can't happen. And if you're going to be taking a massive step back like that, this might not end up being a great season for Virginia Tech. Now, again, you can't really hit the panic button. For them, it's game 1. But this is a great showing for South Carolina. And also, there's definitely a bit of sentimentality that goes into it for Shane Beamer. Because for those who may not know, Frank Beamer, his father, was actually a long-time and very accomplished head coach at Virginia Tech. For years, he has been trying to win a game like this, and it hasn't happened. So for him to get a win against his dad's former school as a coach in the season opener, like, that has got to be truly special for him. And it might honestly be until they actually contend for, like, a title maybe. This may go down as one of the more significant wins he's ever had in his college coaching career. I would think so, at least. So you gotta give him respect for that. Alright, and then moving on to the nightcap on Sunday. Notre Dame and Miami. Carson Beck, fifth-year senior, up against C.J. Carr, and a redshirt freshman, being the first one to debut for Notre Dame in quite some time. And honestly, as I noted, this game was going to put a lot on display for both quarterbacks. Now, Carr struggled to start this out. There's no denying it, and again, that's par for the course. Like, he hadn't even so much as attempted a collegiate pass before getting one to Faison on an RPO play. And it's great to see that they have Faison back, by the way. But yeah, it wasn't easy at all. It wasn't all him, though. Like, yes, there were reads he probably missed at the same time, but for a while, Notre Dame's offense was just sputtering. Whether it wasn't them doing a great enough job of establishing Jeremiah Love's presence in the run game, and knowing that he could also be a Heisman candidate this season, and also a receiver by the name of Malachi Fields fumbling on the first chance he got. The former Virginia wide receiver transferred to Notre Dame in the offseason, and I didn't even know anything about it, okay? But upon seeing it and knowing how good of a player he actually is, you'd feel like it could pay off for them. And yet, first reception with the team, they force a fumble on him in a pretty smart way. And the Hurricanes managed to get a pretty solid field position advantage there. They also don't do anything with it because Notre Dame's defense is still as great as they are. But it was weird because I looked up and I was wondering what the hell was going on. I was questioning whether or not it was a fumbled snap or like a fake field goal that they were attempting, because I just see the holder running with the fucking ball, and they would mention that it was a fumbled snap. So that's tough. That would end the stalemate in the first quarter. The Hurricanes would have a response of their own, because another receiver in the name of Malachi Toney would actually start carving up the Hayden Irish defense single-handedly. He had multiple receptions on this possession, including a 28-yard dime from Carson Beck to him for a touchdown. Like, he just stood in the pocket with enough poise, and he fired it right over the middle to him for an easy read. The Hurricanes would eventually keep that going too, but not before Notre Dame would respond. They settled Carr into it a little bit with run after run after run, balancing it between Jadarian Price and him. Price would also get like a massive 30-yard run here, and then Carr would eventually get them in on 3rd and goal from the 7-yard line for a touchdown. But Miami would make one of the plays of the fucking week, if not the play of the week. Driving down, taking dink and dunk passes here and there. They didn't really have a large gain at all, but it was a methodical drive led by Carson Beck here. And you would get down to 2nd and 3 near their red zone. And man, yo. Oh my gosh. I mean, bro, like, this fucking catch right here, bro, was one of the plays of the week. I kid you not, man. Because Carson Beck, in this situation, is getting pressured, obviously. They're going to dial up the heat. They have a free rusher running his way, and he's nearly getting sacked. His body's getting contorted. At that point, he throws the ball. It's a fucking spiral over the seam. It's probably a little bit errant, and I was probably underselling the pass in the moment. In all honesty, that might be as good of a pass as you can throw in that situation when you're under that much direct pressure from an oncoming defender, okay? But he fires it up. And somehow, someway, Daniels Jr., a transfer, gets open. It's going to take a fucking Herculean effort for him to make this play and score. And he does both of those things. He reaches out with his right arm and fucking snags it one-handed. All right, leaning back into the end zone for a touchdown. It bobbles up a little bit, but he maintains control of it. They challenge it, and the call is upheld. Miami's got the momentum heading into the second half. What a fucking play, man. And SportsCenter was right on that, too. The game was going on, and they were even saying that, hey, this is the top play of the week right here. There's no question about it. Now, there was a different catch involving another Florida squad, actually, the Gators, that had a player make a pretty good catch as well. But I'm saying, like, circumstantially, in terms of, you know what I'm saying, having to get a touchdown on that possession and dealing with so much coverage in that same time, that was arguably the better catch. And they would agree. But hey, man. Alright. So we get into the third quarter, and they would ride that momentum. Like, they would go on and get another rushing touchdown with another methodical drive led by Beck that strategically took off more than half of the time in the third quarter so far. Notre Dame had to work extra hard to try to battle back in this one. But both teams would certainly prevent each other from doing much of anything at this time, as they would both punt before they opened up the fourth quarter, Notre Dame, that is, getting a touchdown. Now, again, they had to go through multiple third down and overall conversions here to make it happen. But Carr, in an instant, to open up the fourth quarter, because that's your game plan. If you're going to get down and have a long drive, you need to either make sure that you can score before the third quarter ends or at least right when the fourth quarter starts. You can't drag it on for much longer than that. They got it within the first few seconds, and it would be a one-possession ball game. Now, Beck would start to get rattled a little bit for some reason. I don't know. Some of his reads were just a little too, good to him, I guess, to where he just started completely misdiagnosing everything, and he just had to punt from there, as they would also start sending a little bit of pressure as well. But fortunately, the Hurricanes would be helped out a little bit. This has always been a problem with them. You know, they get these large leads, and then this defense, man, down the stretch of these games, they'll find a way to fuck it up. They did not fuck up on this play. Now, you can look at the box score and say that C.J. Carr is responsible for this interception right here, but at the same time, when you understand how this interception came to happen, you'll understand why I say that this is not his fault. It's not. I'm not going to lie to you. They run an RPO play, right? And again, a lot of these damn RPO plays can be so predictable sometimes, especially when we come to these damn cross screens. These teams be calling that shit Like, they really fought for it. And it doesn't always happen like that, man. But nevertheless, they call that. They blow the pass up completely. And it just hangs in the air for so much time because it gets deflected by the defense. Okay? It hangs up in the air. It gets deflected by another Miami defender. And then it gets kicked up in the air by that same dude. And then as that's happening, over comes a defender, Bain Jr., I guess one of their linemen. He comes over and he makes the interception. Like, there is just nothing you can do about it. That is just highly unlucky. Like, I could not realistically put that on Carr. He's just doing what he's being asked to do. Can you really game plan for something like that? You can't. Okay, so I wouldn't blame that on him. But it did immediately help the Hurricanes at least push the lead up to 10. The Irish had to respond, and respond they would. You know, you have to shake off something like that, have a little bit of short-term memory. And you got to credit C.J. Carr for that. You know, he could have easily let that get to his head. And that did not happen at all. He would then proceed to, after another stop on Beck in the offense there, they would drive down in just 3 plays and 75 yards, with Raritan actually showcasing his hands. Now, again, there was no reason for him to drop something like that. He was wide open. And he had been struggling to haul in catches all day long. Don't know why that was, given his specific build. But he reeled that one in, and he was rumbling and bumbling down the field. He don't have the speed to get a touchdown out that play. But it helped them nevertheless. C.J. Carr would just finish the drive off anyways, muscling in for a touchdown of his own to tie up the ball game with 3 minutes and 21 seconds left. But this is where the experience of Beck would just kick in. I mean, you know, they would lean a little bit more on their rushing attack, and they would have Beck just make a decent amount of reads. In fact, they never really asked him to pass all that much in the first place. But, you know, you're trying to make sure that he can protect the ball, and they have been doing well in the rushing attack, so it worked out well for them, because with 1 minute and 8 seconds left, they would then take the lead. Here, as great as the trenches on both sides for Notre Dame football can be, they let C.J. Carr down here. They let him down. No question about it. And it's fucked up. Like, you are in a crazy position, and yet C.J. Carr got you there. But he's a redshirt freshman being asked to tie or win the ball game with 1 minute and 4 seconds left in his first ever start as a player in college. That's a lot, but it felt like he was ready for the moment because he had played reasonably well all game long. And yet, on these plays, like, he gets a nice gain to start things out for a first down, and then yet, on back-to-back plays, he gets sacked for yardage. The first one sees them lose a shit ton of seconds on the clock because he ends up being penalized for grounding, but at the same time, the way that the pressure got to him that quickly, it's like you're not trying to take a sack there in that position. You're not trying to lose yards. I thought he did the right thing. And that wouldn't have happened if he got enough time to sit in the pocket and make a read. You gotta be able to grant him that if you are an offensive line as experienced as they are. And then, to add even more insult to injury, the next play would see him get sacked again with another free rusher. And the same person, in fact, making that play to effectively end the ball game. Because they had no timeouts left at that point. You gotta understand the situation. I'm sure C.J. Carr did. But where the hell was the same protection and recognition on the part of the offensive line? This is inexcusable to me. And as a result, Hurricanes would win 27-24 in this one. to check out Miami, you would have Carson Beck get 205 passing yards on 66.7% completion, along with 2 touchdowns. Meanwhile, Fletcher Jr. had 66 rushing yards on the ground. Malachi Tony had 6 receptions for 82 yards and a touchdown, while C.J. Daniels had 5 receptions for 46 yards and that aforementioned monster catch for a touchdown. As for Notre Dame, Carr played well. He did. 19 of 30, 221 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and an interception with another rushing touchdown. Might not jump off the table, but in a debut, again, he did damn near everything he was asked to do. Damn near everything. And definitely exceeded expectations in a few areas. But again, in time he'll learn. He just needed help. The fact that Jeremiah Love was held to 3.3 yards per carry, for example. The fact that Raridan had all those drops. The fact that Malachi Fields had that fumble, despite having 3 receptions for 48 yards. It's dude, you gotta be able. All these players are far more experienced than he is. And yet, when they needed to assist him, they failed to do so. And that was the difference in what ended up being a 3-point ball game. And that's highly unfortunate. Again, it's definitely a tall task to ask Carr to come in against a pretty solid Miami team in Miami, actually, and, have to face off against that home field advantage while trying to go out and win this. It's a lot. And yet, he almost made that shit happen. I don't think there'd be too much movement as far as this game is concerned. It's a 6-10 matchup, so we'll see what happens. But hey, man,